What's up? I don't feel like talking right now, but I feel like getting started is probably the hardest part. And there's a couple things that I think about. Actually, what comes to mind right now is this tweet I saw a long time ago called the Creativity Pipeline. And this was by Julian. I actually don't know if he has a last name. Well, he does obviously have a last name, but he just goes by Julian on Twitter. And he was talking about how Ed Sheeran and Taylor Swift and all these top artists use a certain method to get their own writing process started. And his point was that if, so many top performers in their field utilize this tactic, then it's got to be a good one, or at least one worth hearing. And his point is that creativity or getting something done, a creative endeavor, making a video, writing, drawing, reading. Typically, I mean, this example is about writing, is that when these artists sit down and they say to themselves, okay, it's time to write a song, they don't just instantly jump into trying to write lyrics. Well, technically they do, but the quality of those lyrics is not expected to be good. And when we have an idea, it's going to be unfinished. Just that is the nature of the first iteration of something, is that it's not going to be close because you haven't. I just spilled all my tea. Hold on. Anyway, the creativity pipeline is the idea that, let's say I start writing down ideas on a piece of paper. Let's say I'm trying to, write a song. And I write 4 lines of things that rhyme. And my first, 4 lines is just, it's crap. It sucks. And instead of saying to myself, oh my God, this is so bad, I should go do something else, I don't know how to write music, you have to look at that as the first iteration of what you're doing. And the point is that when you write those, let's say you just write 1 line, you should start at the absolute bare minimum. So you should start at literally writing down any word that comes to mind. Just like dog, cat, fork, spoon, breakfast, pasta. It might have absolutely nothing to do with what you're actually trying to write about, but the act of getting it down on paper and seeing what you've put out on a creative level is what allows your brain to see that and say, okay, that's not what I want. And then you're able to slowly refine. And the point is that when you see it, that's what actually gives you an understanding about, okay, what is here that I don't want? And then you refine, and you refine, and you refine, and you refine, and you refine. And the pipeline is, think of water trying to get out of the pipeline, but it's backed up by all this mud. What you have to do is get all the mud out of the pipe before the water can start to flow all the way through and come out. And that typically is the nature of creative work, is that you have to be able to clear all the mud out before you can get that clear stream of water, which is typically good creative output. And so that, I feel, is similar to me trying to start these videos. Is I often will have a topic in mind, something that I've thought about and written down, but actually getting myself to talk and think on interesting tangents and output actual creative thinking is sometimes a challenge, and sometimes it takes time to work up to that. So that's, I guess, kind of the first thing that occurred to me. But what I'm going to title this video, I believe, is why I changed the Cowbelly logo. And this is another question that I've gotten from people over time is like, why don't you stay with the penguin logo? Why don't you stay with the penguin face? And the reason is that long term, Cowbelly, I think, is mostly going to represent an idea or a way of thinking, a way of approaching building things and creating things. And the logo will be used to signify that that form of thinking was applied to create that certain thing. And in order for the thinking to be easily assigned to an entity, it has to be simple. It has to be something that can be widely understood. It has to be something that is, easy to transpose and extrapolate and move about. And I really couldn't find that fluidity with the penguin. And the other thing is that the penguin is an animal. It's already has its own kind of connotation and things that are connected with it, that I didn't feel were wholly representative of what I'm trying to accomplish with Cowbelly. The second thing is that, as I've explained before, I think the opportunity that Cowbelly is trying to address is being the platform that connects a user with all the other platforms. The platform that draws a thread through all the other platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok, on and on. And what I think the one common denominator between all these platforms is that they use a check mark to symbolize verification. Goodness is the the closest thing that I can draw out of my brain right now. But yeah, the check mark is what's common between all these platforms, and that's representative of what Cowbelly is trying to achieve on a technical and a media level in terms of what we're building with Cowbelly GG, is that we're trying to be the platform that is connected to all the other platforms and provides services related to all the other platforms simultaneously. And I think that's represented by Cowbelly kind of being able to move between, we have a presence on TikTok and Snapchat and Discord and YouTube and not really Instagram actually, but I feel that the check mark most succinctly symbolizes the idea or what we're trying to achieve through Cowbelly. So that was the other, I guess in terms of how the logo aligns with the company mission, that's why we're using that logo. I'm trying to figure out how to more regularly get myself to create these videos because I've always been, I feel, a more fluid person, and creating a structure around this. I think differentiating between a hobby and work is important, and understanding that this is a work effort as opposed to a hobby effort is an important distinction for me to make, because work, I feel like through the hobby lens, it's like, oh, I'm just coming on here and I'm just talking about myself and I'm explaining what I'm doing. And I really respect people who are able to take something like there's this guy named TWD98. He's a Mario Kart YouTuber. I've been getting into Mario Kart Wii videos for some reason. And I went to his channel and he publishes videos very often. They're very well refined. It's obvious that he's really figured out a formula to, create engaging content around Mario Kart Wii. And I went to his oldest videos, and his oldest video was 14 years old, and it was like this crappy screen recording of a TV of him playing Mario Kart Wii, showing off shortcuts. And over the 14 years that he's been publishing content, he's slowly refined that process until it's been, he's created this awesome product that, generates him income, I assume. And it's just been a slow refinement over time. And I think that the production of these videos, I was always looking for a hobby. I was looking at it as a hobby because I felt that if it was distinctly defined as work, then it would somehow corrupt the validity of the enterprise. But I don't think that there's anything necessarily wrong with designating it as work. I think when you place it in the work category, it makes things more regular. It puts a certain understanding that this is on some level obligatory. And I don't think, I think the worry is that making something obligatory will diminish the creativity and potential interestingness of the videos if something is purely looked at as work. But what I'm realizing is that if I frame everything within the scope of work, it's more about the fact that I'm interested in keeping this going as a work thing. And I'm not necessarily, because a hobby is something that you don't necessarily expect a return on or whatever. But I mean, since when has cowbelly not been work? I mean, that, it's a form of work. And YouTube, I think, initially started out as a hobby thing, and then it turned into a job for a lot of people. And I think not recognizing the return on investment that you should be able to recoup from putting time and effort into YouTube is dumb. And I think just looking at it as a hobby and hoping that it turns into a profession is not a good idea. And I think looking at it just purely from the perspective of this is work, and I can recognize that it's work, and just because it is work doesn't diminish the creative value that I can put into it. Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing to do. I think it'll keep me more regulated. I think it'll actually ensure a consistent product. Yeah, so how the classification of what I'm doing is going to interact with what I was talking about in the other video, doing something for yourself versus doing it for the money. I know that those two things interact, but at this moment I cannot tie them together in my mind. I know that there's something going on there, but yeah. Someone commented on the video yesterday. Hold on, let me find it. Piper Do 2817. For me, a lot of the time, as soon as a hobby becomes work, I lose all interest, which sucks because it means that it means that my hobbies can't turn into careers. I said, why do you think that is? They said, I believe it is because of the transition from doing something because you feel inspired / feel like doing it to something you need to or feel like you should. Essentially, the change from choice to obligation makes you feel less free, I guess. So this is the conundrum in a nutshell. And I guess I'm going to disagree. Or I think the fear stems from when something turns into an obligation and you feel less free to do it, that then constrains the creativity that can go into the endeavor. And I feel as if you can recognize it purely as an obligation and as work, then that actually allows you to be as creative and put as much energy into the endeavor as you think you can. And I think it also has to do with the level of belief and the level of confidence that you have in what you're creating and how other people respond to that. And but this is, to me, it's very interesting. It's a war that I sometimes have to mediate in my mind. And it's funny because the creation of these videos is actually a it ignites that discussion in my mind, because this is work. This is a creative endeavor. Separating those two things is, yeah. So it, it, I have always, I feel, really enjoyed my work. And so that actually makes this distinction that much harder, because not like we're like blurring the lines between what a hobby is and what work is, it's tough. But I think expecting a recoupment on investment is probably one of the things that would separate a hobby from work. Like, I play pickleball all the time, and I spend a bunch of money playing pickleball, and I don't really have any expectation of making a return on that investment, even though I did create a pickleball channel. Um, but I actually think that I'm going to leave that pickleball channel alone and just let pickleball fully be a hobby and not try to monetize it, not try to recoup an investment from it, and just say, hey, I spend my money on this. It's personal fulfillment. It's interesting. It's a hobby. I get to meet new people. I get to be, part of a community. I'm going to have work over here. And the stuff that I do on the internet, the stuff that I do online, it started as a hobby. It started as a genuine interest and passion for technology and social platforms and whatever. But when it evolved into work and an obligation, it became work. And I think maybe having to let go of the idea that everything when it starts as a hobby, and rather just looking at it now as what I'm starting is a business project, is an important distinction to make, and actually letting go of the idea that, oh, it's just a hobby and I'm not really expecting anything to happen as a result of doing this. Yeah, I think that's an important distinction to make for myself. And I think that's actually what will allow me to continue to produce videos. Because if I see it as an obligation as opposed to a hobby, then I'm going to stick with it. But if it's a hobby, I can come and go as I please. And wow. I mean, historically, I feel as though I've constantly started and stopped projects. And maybe it's because I've always viewed them as hobbies, fundamentally. But there was an expectation of a return on investment. So I kind of, I guess, inappropriately blurred the lines between what I consider a hobby and what I consider a work. Huh. This is going to require more introspection to actually figure out, because it's not clearly delineated in my mind yet. But I feel like publishing these videos and getting people's feedback and thoughts does help. So, yeah. Interesting video today. I did not expect it to turn into this, but that's the beauty of getting that creativity pipeline going. So, cool. All right. If you're still here, I appreciate you watching and listening. And if you have any thoughts, comments, insights that you'd like to share, please do so in the comment section. I do read them. And have a great day. Peace.